Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today we're talking about what to do when your husband hurts your feelings. What if you had a powerful one-word answer that made him think about what he had just said or done and respond with tenderness and even accountability? I'm also excited for you to hear from my guest, Darlene, whose relationship with her first love fizzled shortly after they had their daughter. They drifted apart after she realized he didn't even want to be a father, and he wasn't very good at it anyway. So she raised her daughter alone for 20 years, and then life brought them back together. She was willing to do just about anything to make it work, but it seemed like the harder she tried, the more he retreated. She's going to tell us not only how she saved the relationship, but how she made it amazing, shiny, and wonderful. And then I'll be giving out the award for the worst relationship advice of the week, which is part of some very popular communication training that you hear about. But when I used it, when I see other women using it, it all goes kablooey and it causes boatloads of hostility. And that is not what anyone is trying to do in her relationship. So all of that's coming up. But first, let's talk about what to do when your husband hurts your feelings. Now, my husband hurts my feelings sometimes, even now that our marriage has been mostly playful and passionate for many, many years. It's not very often anymore, I admit, but as human beings living in close proximity, that is going to happen occasionally. And when he does, my knee-jerk reaction is to strike back, to retort, to show him why he's wrong and offer 100 airtight defenses along with a subtle but sharp insult. But these days, I am much more likely to utter just one word, and that word is ouch. Ouch. It's frightening to say because it means admitting that he's landed on a tender spot. But I prefer that now to putting up my dukes. I'm not the big fighter I used to be. I ended up lonely and emotionally hungover afterward in those bad old days. With this vulnerable approach, I'm choosing the intimacy over my impulse to get him back. And being able to make a choice instead of reacting, it feels like a superpower. It's true that I'm opening myself up to further hurt because I'm not defending myself, which is pretty scary. But that kind of vulnerability has a way of calling someone else to higher ground. It's trusting him to hold your heart in safe hands. And that is exactly what happens when I say ouch. And ouch not only lets me preserve the emotional safety, it keeps me from lobbing hurtful words back at him. And it gives him the opportunity, which he often takes, to respond softly and tenderly and even accountably. He doesn't really want to hurt me. He wants to love me. Even if I'm oversensitive, even if I'm hormonal, nothing could demonstrate that to me more than seeing how sweetly he responds when I don't defend, but just let myself be utterly vulnerable. And that's when I feel most lavishly and intensely and thoroughly loved. And it's a feeling I wouldn't want to go without now that I know how it feels. And saying ouch when I was hurt definitely helped me get there. Now, sometimes women will say that saying ouch does not work with her man because he just says, ouch, ouch, what is ouch? But even a toddler understands the word ouch, so he knows what it means. He doesn't have to like it when he hears only his own conscience instead of maybe the fighting words that usually come out of your mouth. Sometimes it's convicting. Also, I don't get a good response from saying ouch if I only remember after I've already lobbed some hurtful words in my husband's direction. If I've been rolling around in the mud for a while with him and I suddenly say, ouch, it's sort of like shooting someone with a rubber band and then being upset when they shoot you back. You know, the words don't match the actions. The question you might ask yourself about ouch is this working for me? Did I stay dignified? Did I save myself from having to apologize later? Did I honor my own feelings in that moment? If I can say yes to those things, then I consider saying ouch a win for me and a win for the intimacy and connection in my relationship. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. I am so excited to have Darlene as my guest, whose relationship with her first love fizzled shortly after they had their daughter. They just drifted apart, and she decided that he just didn't want to be a father, and he wasn't that good at it anyway. So she raised her daughter alone for 20 years, and then life brought them back together again. They got a second chance. But when he started giving her the silent treatment for a week, even though she wasn't doing anything wrong, she was terrified that she would lose her second chance. She was willing to do anything to make it work, but it seemed like the harder she tried, the more he retreated. She's going to tell us not only how she saved this relationship, but made it wonderful. Welcome, Dar.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me on. I feel honored.
Yes, thank you for being here. I'm excited for everyone to hear your story. So take us way back to the beginning of the bad old days. What was going on in your relationship?
All right. Well, I have to go back a lot of years. I was only 16 when I actually met Jay, and for 4 years we were on and off. I guess I should have known then, right? The off was that he wasn't good at committing. So, but anyway, we ended up having a daughter, and when I was 20, we had our daughter, and it just seemed like he wasn't doing anything right. He wasn't holding her right. He wasn't changing her right. He'd hand her back when she would cry. And it just really, for me, just showed that he wasn't ready to be a father. Or he didn't even know how to be a father, I guess, right? So when she was 3 months old, he did ask me to marry him. But I just felt he was doing it out of maybe obligation. I said no, of course, because I told him that I didn't think he was ready to be a father. So I said, give me 3 years, and then never heard from him again for about 20 years.
Wow. And so you were then a single mom. So it really was all on you for those 20 years. So, but it sounds like you were like, well, just as well, he wasn't much help.
Right. Yeah, it just really solidified it for me that, he didn't want to commit and didn't want to be a father and didn't want to be a husband. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, being a single mom, it's a hard job.
It is.
And it's kind of lonely.
Yeah. A lot of responsibility, and sure is.
And he wasn't participating at all.
No, I literally did not see him for almost 20 years.
Wow.
Nothing. Wow. No contacts, no child support, no nothing.
You just did it all by yourself. So 20 years later, what happened?
Yeah, so, it was really, in its own way, it's really a beautiful story. We were brought back together. My daughter had never met her father or anyone on his side of the family, right? We were estranged for 20 years. And it was just by the hand of God that one day his mother came into the hairdressers where my daughter was working. And we had talked about him prior, maybe 6 months prior. I had really sat down with her and just told her the story of what happened. So she knew the name. And when Marion came in, she knew who she was only because we had previously talked about it. So my daughter wasn't supposed to be working that day. And she got called into work. And someone called to make an appointment for this woman named Marion. And my daughter recognized the name and called me and said, I want her to know who I am. So that was really the beginning of how we got back together. I went down there, and as his mother was walking out, I went behind her and introduced myself. And of course, she remembered me. And we started really hugging and talking, and I asked her how Jay was, and she said he had never married, no more children. I had never married, no more children. And I asked her if she knew who was in there, because my daughter looked exactly like her father. So it clicked. So I went in, got my daughter, and she came out, and it was the beginning of a really beautiful reunion of healing. I told her she could let Jay know that she saw us, and if he wanted to contact us, then he could.
So you left the ball in his court.
I left it in his court because I figured if he's not willing to be a father or a husband, I wasn't going to chase him. So, yeah, I left it in his court.
And what did he do?
Yeah, so he actually called a few days later. The reason actually that Marion was in the hairdressers was that his father had just passed away a few days before that. And so the next day was the funeral. So that was really sad to hear. But yeah, so he called me a few days after the funeral. We talked for an hour and a half and just felt like a day hadn't gone by, you know. And, you know, I thought that he had just changed and was this so, you know, grown up, right? 20 years, he had changed and matured. And that was the start of, we decided for him to meet his daughter. And that was the start of us getting back together. We met with him 2 weeks later, or we met with him, I guess the next week. It was right before her 20th birthday. And when he opened the door, he saw just a reflection of himself. You know, they looked so much alike.
That must have been a great moment to see your daughter meeting her father. You know, really, it wasn't the very first time, but it was pretty close for her.
Yeah,
She,
for
if I
her,
remember, 3-month-old. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for him to see her for the first time must have been an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
So, then there were the sparks came back. It sounds like between the two.
Yeah, we started going over to his mother's just to like really bring her photo albums and videotapes, you know, just so he could see a glimpse of her growing up. But it started becoming obvious that the feelings between him and I were still there. So I just said, you know, I think me and you need to talk just to see what happened. What happened? What happened to 20 years? You know?
Yeah.
And we agreed to disagree. But
so during that talk, you didn't see it the same way.
no, not at all. No, not at all.
What did he see? What was his side of it?
He says, in his view, that I had kicked him to the curb. I said that he was not ready to be a father. You know, the calls became further and further apart. When he came over, it became further and further apart. There was some drinking involved. And I just figured he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
That was my version, that he was irresponsible.
Yeah. So, but now he seems more mature. You're feeling this attraction, and he is too. So, what happened?
Yeah. So that was in 2000, and unfortunately, you know, sadly, within a few months, his mother also passed away. But by this time, we just knew that our love had really come back, and I thought, wow, this 20 years really changed this man. Like, he was the essence of who he was, but he just seemed more mature. And I thought I could do this with this guy, right? And really quickly after we started talking, he said one day, if I asked you to marry me, would you? Because we had never gotten married. And I said, I think I would.
So he was proposing. He was proposing.
Kind of, yeah. It was like an informal.
There was no ring, and he wasn't on his
not
knee.
yet.
He just wanted to check on you.
Yeah, I guess he was just checking in.
Taking your temperature. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you were excited. You were thrilled.
Yeah. And, you know, as the months went by, everybody else was thrilled too. Like, everyone who did not know him before, Jay was a really bad introvert. So he didn't come to family functions back then. We're talking the 70s. Nobody really saw him or knew him. So when he disappeared, nobody really knew who Kelly's father was. He was just some mystery guy out there that nobody knew. So when we got back together, my family just was so happy that Kelly's father was back in our life, and that I was back in love again. And he was just this really great guy. And it just was so beautiful, you know. The beginning, you know, it's like having fairy dust sprinkled, right? Everything's
Completely.
just perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially, I mean, that's better than a lot of first loves, right? Where maybe the family doesn't always accept the person, but
Right.
they were really embracing him. So it just seems like a storybook romance at this point.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
I really felt it was like I really had this second chance that I just thought I would never, ever have. And it was with this guy who came back as this really great guy, romantic and kind and treated me good and very attentive. Yeah.
So then you lived happily ever after, it sounds like.
Okay, so I wish, but yeah, right. So, most of the first year was really super good. I mean, him and Kelly were bonding, and me and him were bonding. Like, just the love was there. And then things started showing up. I'm really helpful, right? So I had just raised my daughter, right? So I was a strong woman. I worked my job for a lot of years and was a boss at work and just a strong woman who had taken charge for a lot of years, right? As a single parent.
Yeah, you had
Um,
to. You were that. You were
yeah,
it. You were in
yeah.
charge.
So I figured he didn't know how to raise a child, right? And so when Kelly came into his life, I was still in that mode. Like just did what I do. I'm helpful. And I started noticing that no matter what I did, he would seem irritated, aggravated. And then there were times where he would just stop talking to me, go into his man cave, emotional man cave. And it was torturous. Sometimes he'd not talk to me for a week
For a week.
and a week. And I
Silent treatment.
remember one time it was longer than a week, and I just really thought I was going to die. It was really torturous feeling.
Yeah, it is torturous.
Yeah,
There's nothing more lonely.
yeah,
So it's physically there and present. It's just sort of like a constant reminder that he's not talking to you. You're rejected.
yep,
No,
yep.
okay.
And that's exactly what it felt like was coming up again. Like, oh, there's that guy. He put on that mask for so many months, but that real guy's showing back up again.
So it was almost like an imposter. He could just keep it together for long enough to fool you into getting back with him, and then this really kind of cruel behavior started. It sounds like.
Yeah, and I do call it cruel behavior because it is very difficult to be in a house with somebody who's not talking to you.
Oh
It
yeah,
is, yeah, yeah. It felt like emotional abuse almost because, yeah,
yeah,
that's what it felt like really, and it was scary.
yeah.
Scary because I thought, wow, after this reunion and getting back together, and everybody's so happy for us, I don't know what I'm doing here that he's not talking to me. So I really at that point thought I was going to lose my second chance there.
Yeah, terrifying because it is awful to be so in love and so happy, and then just think, where did it go? So you just thought, well, it's just him. He's still not ready.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I thought because I was super helpful. Like I thought I would brought everything that well at the time I was his girlfriend is supposed to bring, right? I was happy when he came home from work and happy just in general, helpful and did things and showed him things and
Yeah, you were trying
yeah,
really hard. Sounds like.
I was trying super hard and it seemed like the more I tried, the more he would just pull away, right? And become distant. It's really, really frustrating. And I just was sure that he wasn't ready. It was good. That's what it came down to.
So were you thinking, okay, I got to break up with him again, or what were you?
Uh, I was not thinking that because I was so happy to have the second chance, but I was terrified that I was going to lose that second chance.
So it was not that you were going to break up with him, but you thought he was going to break up with you. He was going to leave
Absolutely.
you.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. And
Yeah.
so what happened?
So now we're starting, we kind of got through the first year and I knew that, well, it wasn't me, I thought. Right?
Right.
So I knew that
Definitely
he was
not.
being really jerky and yeah, didn't know how long that was going to go on before, because my belief was he leaves. He's a man that leaves. He left us for 20 years.
Yes, he did.
So that guy was showing up again. And that was my belief. Like, what day is he going to leave? Just end this and disappear again. because at this point he was 45 when we met again. I was 40. And yeah, so I knew that I was doing everything I thought I could do to make it work. And it was really, the ball was in his court. He was just going to leave one day. That really was my belief, which was terrifying. For my daughter also. Here he had just come back.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's seeing this tension between you and.
Well, I'm going to tell you, she did see some of it, but I was really trying to hide it because I was embarrassed that he was showing up again that way. This was like pretty embarrassing for me. So I didn't really share that, but she did see it if she was home, at the house. She had already been out on her own at that point. Yeah.
So this is enormously painful, but then something changed.
Yeah. So going into year 2, it was really tense and scary. And, he'd do this on and off, not talking to me. And I just had no idea what I was doing wrong. Like, I didn't know how to change it, but I wanted to change it. Just didn't know how. And, I'll never forget. I was laying in bed one morning. It was 2001, and he had left for work. And I was listening to the TV, not watching it, and I hear Katie Couric interviewing this woman. And her name happened to be Laura Doyle. And she was talking about her book, The Surrendered Wife. And I have to say, in that short interview, it just connected with me. I thought, like, she is talking about my life. I sat up in bed, and although I was repulsed by the name, The Surrendered Wife, I was a strong woman. I'm thinking surrendered, right? But I knew that what she was saying, it just connected with me. I knew it was valuable. So maybe it was what I was looking for, right? So I wrote down the name of the book and went out and got it. And I have to say, within 2 weeks, I noticed a shift. Like, I got immediate results within 2 weeks. And I read through that book. Well, I read it probably 100 times, but I read through that book pretty quick. And what I learned was that he really needed respect. And it looked much different than I thought respect should look. I thought I was helpful doing everything, and that was very respectful. But to him, it felt very controlling, and disrespectful. So I saw immediate results when I stopped being so helpful, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yes. Was that the first thing you started to do differently, you think? It's just kind of stop yourself from being helpful.
Yeah. When I would catch myself wanting to tell him something, I would stop. And I just noticed that there was just some kind of shift. I didn't know exactly what it was yet, but it was enough of a shift to give me hope to really know I was on to something here.
Yeah. And so was there a moment when you said to yourself, wow, this is really working, like taking this approach?
Yeah. So I want to tell you a quick story, though, because it was a journey, right? Process. It took a while to get it and to change how I was, interacting. But there was this one day we were at the bank and we were merging our information in a bank account, And so we sat down with the woman. This is just a glimpse of the pain I was in that I needed to change, right? My helpfulness. Yeah. So we were sitting with the woman at the bank and she asked for Jay's address, his address and his information. And I spoke up to tell her what his address was because that was just what I did, right? I'm so helpful. And he looked at me and he said, "You don't need to speak for me." And I started crying so hard that I couldn't stop. And my head was down and I'm crying. And I know that woman was thinking, this guy is the biggest jerk ever, making his wife cry. Or we weren't married yet at that time. And she handed me a box of tissues. And this was after I had started trying to practice these, what you had in the book, right? These skills. And it was obvious I was not good at it yet. And that's the kind of behavior that I got back. He would lash out at me. And I think that was one of the times where he stopped talking to me too, once we got home for a few days. He was so mad.
Yeah, definitely sounds lonely, painful.
Yeah.
And you really didn't know before that what you were anything, that anything, what's so bad about that, right? You're just
Right.
helping out. Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to say the reason I was crying, and this was after I had really was reading the book, was because I knew that I was being helpful and that was a behavior I was trying to change. So I wasn't crying because he snapped. I was crying because at this point I knew what I wanted to change.
Yeah.
But old behavior just came up for me. I wanted to be helpful.
So it
Yeah,
felt kind of self-destructive in that
it
moment. So
did.
like it's the
It
pain
did.
of knowing what you want to be doing differently and not being able to do it. Just
Yeah, that's exactly it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You were doing this all by yourself. You just had a book.
Yeah. So yeah, back then it was your first book.
Right.
So there
Right.
was nobody. And I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't talk to my family. My daughter did know that I was reading this book, but I didn't talk to one other soul. And yeah, you just wrote the book. So there was no community or anybody I could reach out to. I thought I was so alone in this and that I just married or I was just back with this jerk who was showing back up again. But I wanted to change it because I saw that glimpse of hope after a few weeks. And I knew that I just knew I was on something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was disappointed that I spoke up.
So, but you had some moments of triumph too, it sounds
I
like.
did. I had lots of moments of triumph. One thing I really started noticing, and I read the book a lot of times, and I just really wanted to absorb it so I could change my natural behavior. Because when I started seeing good results, it just kept me, wanting to go forward. But one thing I noticed was the silent treatment started getting less. So, maybe one time it was a week, and then it might be as time went on 3 days, and then 2 days, and, from there it just got better and better and better. I remember it was probably a year after I read the book, and things started getting really good again, like it was in the beginning. He went in and told his boss that he needed a raise because he has a family now that he has to take care of. Right? He bought his parents' house. Things that I thought he was just irresponsible and didn't want to stay, but he started doing things that proved me wrong.
Who's stepping up
He
to
was
be
stepping up.
to be the man that was gonna love
Yeah,
you
yeah,
and his daughter.
yeah, yeah,
Sweet. And so it sounds like you saw a kind of a connection between what you were doing
yeah,
and him being inspired to take those steps.
yeah, yeah. Definite connection. I didn't know how he saw it through his eyes. So while I thought it was always him, I just started seeing it different. Because when I would be, and also I wasn't vulnerable, right? So, because I had spent 20 years with walls and whatever. So it was really hard for me to be vulnerable with him, especially when he stopped talking to me, like that made the wall come back again.
Sure.
So, yeah, I definitely saw that when I followed what I was reading in the book and kind of tested it out, that he responded positively. So I absolutely knew that this was the way that I was looking for. That's what I say. Like I was looking for a way, but I had no idea what that way looked like. But the book really showed me the way that worked with him. Because I thought I was the only one but the jerky boyfriend, right? So I thought, well, but then you showed me that I wasn't the only one. So I thought it was us too. I thought it was just us two.
Just us two, just
Yeah.
you and me had a jerky man in our lives. Isn't it funny how we just always think this is not going on at anybody else's house, just my house? And it's so shameful and embarrassing.
Shameful. Yeah. There was no way I would share that part, like the bad part, with my family because all they knew was what they saw, the good part, the first
Right.
year.
You have a
Yeah.
certain image to keep up, right? You want people
Yeah.
to see.
But there was a time when I really did know that these skills are working. And that was in 2002, 1 year after I had the book and really, really put things in place. He asked me to marry him officially with a diamond ring.
Wow.
So I knew that, this was what I was looking for, even though I had a long way to go, right? Mere
Yeah, you
mortal
weren't
woman.
perfect, but
Yeah,
good enough, right?
yeah,
Instead of him, you thought he was going to leave you, and
yes,
instead he bought you a diamond ring.
Yeah, that it was a shock almost because I knew that I had a lot of changes to make. Just it was a struggle, right? Just trying to stay consistent. Yeah. So my thought was, what days are you going to leave? And then here he asked me to marry him, which was so amazing to me.
And what'd you say this time?
Oh, I said yes. I said yes, happily yes, because his behavior had changed also. So I thought he could be a man that I could marry. You know, the guy before the book who stopped talking to me, I don't know that I would have wanted to marry him. I probably would have questioned it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this guy I definitely wanted to marry. Seemed like he'd changed.
He changed, yeah, so much, right? I love that.
Yeah.
So just you having the right information, you had a totally different experience.
Yeah.
And so you got married, and how was your married life?
Yeah, so it's a process, right? So we got married 1 year later, beautiful wedding, and our daughter actually sang in our what on the altar, and things were progressing in the right way, right? And he still would have his moments where he would not talk to me, but as the years were going on, remember I had nobody; it was just me and the book. And I said I spent a lot of time in the bathroom crying, trying to figure this out. But yeah, I absolutely noticed that we were so connected and the love was there and the romance was there and the intimacy definitely there. And not just intimacy in the bedroom, intimacy from when we woke up till when we went to bed. Touching, kissing, just being considerate of each other, that kind of intimacy. Yeah, so things were really going great. And he had his relationship with Kelly was so wonderful, which I didn't know. Like, how was he going to bond with her? She hadn't grown up with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just was a really, really good husband and father. I was seeing that. And at this time, I was really learning myself what he needed, and how it looked. Yeah, so in 2007, 7 years after we got back together, we ended up having a grandson, which just changed our lives again, just this beautiful blessing. And I watched him because I worked from home and my daughter worked long hours. So he was here at our house a lot. And I'm going to tell you, this is the part where I feel so blessed, right? I was already blessed to have this second chance, but I really got to see my husband interact with our grandson in a way I never got to see him interact with our daughter. I got to see him be a grandfather and great husband at this point and a wonderful father. And he just was so good with Bryce, even though there were some things that I didn't agree with, right? So I'll never forget this one day in particular. Bryce was, I don't know, maybe a couple years old, and he was disciplining him about something. They were up in the bedroom, and I could hear him laughing and that, and Bryce must have did something, and he disciplined them. And I went up there and intervened. And I guess I had been doing that since Bryce was born, because maybe my belief was he didn't know how to raise a child. I'm not sure. It's so easy how fast control can come back, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I intervened. And at that point, I had been doing so good for a lot of years that he recognized so quickly how my control and disrespect. And he said, "You do not need to teach me how to be a grandfather." And it just like took me back. Yeah, I pulled that book back up because the book sat next to my bed all those years and I would read it. But as I became more secure and settled in and things are going great, the book kind of got covered by other books, right? So I really realized at that moment that a big life change can bring up my natural control, my natural disrespect. So I brought that book back up again, and really that quickly things got back on track. And yeah, he was pretty forgiving because most of the time, yeah, I was really respectful and not controlling, and all the things that I had learned over the years.
Mm. He was used to being respected now.
He was.
Yeah.
Yep. And not controlled, which is really huge, right? Yeah. And I had learned to be vulnerable, right? So yeah, just I I had learned so much, and I was able to soften my, bring down my walls, because vulnerability was super tough for me. I just, like I said, was so afraid he was going to leave again. And if he had done that, I had to leave my walls up because I had to protect my heart. But as the years went on, vulnerability for me became easier because I felt really loved and protected by him and no longer worried that he was going to leave. So, of course, now I call myself the queen of vulnerability because once I started becoming vulnerable, it became easier and easier.
Yes, yes,
So
you are the queen of
I
vulnerability.
am.
Really, no question
Yeah.
about it.
Huh.
So there's another big twist in your story.
Yes, there is. So, I've said along the line that, I've always felt so blessed to have this book, which I know that if I never found the surrendered life, and if I had given up, if I felt it wasn't working, or, if I just read it and then put it aside, I would have never had the marriage I had. I know that Jay would have never asked me to marry him if I couldn't figure out how to respect him and relinquish the control of him and change myself, right? Become more vulnerable. And also, I was a terrible receiver. He was a great gift giver, and I wouldn't receive, and so I had to learn it all. But anyway, I just know we would have never been married had I not found the book. So, yeah. So our grandson was born, and that just changed our life again. And so in 2013, Bryce was 5, and him and Jay at this point were just so bonded. And so every Saturday we would go out to lunch, and Bryce would come with us. Like, we had our routine we did. So his birthday was in March. So every year I would make him a triple layer white cake and homemade spaghetti meatballs. That was like our tradition for his birthday. And Bryce would help me icing the cake. So his birthday was in March 19th. And my daughter happened to be off that day. And her and Bryce came over, and they iced his cake. And we sat at the dining room table. I videoed it all and had great conversation. And him and Bryce were laughing. And Bryce did the prayer. It was just a beautiful day. But I had ordered him lobster tail for his birthday, and it wasn't in yet. So it wasn't coming in until Thursday. So he said, well, we'll just have another birthday get together, me and you, on Saturday. So I said, great. So that Saturday came, and we were with Bryce again. We went out to lunch and did our normal routine, and we dropped Bryce off. Yeah, so we got home around 6:30 at night, and I made this beautiful lobster dinner for his birthday. He had written up a menu of what he wanted. And it was just a great night. Like, by this time our marriage was very just playful and intimate. It had grown over the years, just enjoyed each other's company and loved them so much, right? Yeah, so we had this beautiful lobster dinner, and I had a new Victoria's Secret, like, it was just a cotton nightgown, but it's kind of clingy. I had lost some weight. And I remember I was at the kitchen sink washing dishes, right? And we had just finished dinner. And he came up behind me, and it just got pretty intimate right there at the kitchen sink. And so then he's like, I'm going to go upstairs. He was watching TV or whatever. And so when I got done, I went upstairs, and I thought, at this point I learned to be the receiver, right? For intimacy. So I made myself available, but I picked up my Oprah magazine, got in bed next to him, and I was reading my Oprah magazine, and he knocked it out of my hand, and he knocked it onto the floor. And when I looked at him, he was smiling that smile that a woman knows, that smile when she sees her husband looking at her, right? And I said to him, you make me just as nervous today as you did when I was 16. And he raised his eyebrow and he said, oh, yeah? Yeah, and that led to another really intimate night. Whatever, a little while later, we were watching March Madness basketball. And I had my head on his chest. I mean, it's just like just a beautiful, beautiful day. I had my head on his chest, and we were watching the game, and I remember so vividly the guy missed the jump shot or something, and I asked him about it, and he was right in the middle of telling me something, and I felt him go back, and his head hit the headboard. And I thought he was fooling around, like joking around. And I looked up at him and I said, stop fooling around. I don't think it's funny. Because he used to do that sometimes. He'd be like, oh, I'm having a heart attack or something. Anyway, I jumped, out of bed and ran on the other side and got on top of him and could see that, yeah, something was happening. He was either having a heart attack or a stroke. I didn't know. I called 911, screaming at the operator, like I didn't know what to do. And he had me do CPR, and I was screaming at Jay not to leave us, don't leave. He couldn't say anything. He was just following me with his eyes. And so I did the whole CPR thing, and the ambulance came, and they tried CPR. They took him to the hospital. The doctor came out and said that he had passed away, which I had already known because when I was working on him, I think that's when he actually passed away. But they came out to verify it. So that was the minute my life changed again. Yeah.
Wow, it's quite a story. It's so bittersweet. It's such a beautiful story in that regard. And one of the things I really take from your story is about how you didn't have any regrets.
That's right. In March, it'll be 7 years. And I have to say that they say there's 5 stages of grief. And the one stage I never went through was the anger. And I just really attribute that to, I feel that like everything was said and done in the marriage. And I had nothing to regret, nothing. Like, last loving words he heard from me was that he made me as nervous today as he did, when I was 16. Like, they were loving words that I sent him away with, I didn't know they were going to be the last words he was going to hear from me. We don't know, right? So I know that if I didn't have these skills, that I could have yelled at him when he knocked that book out of my hand. I could have been the kind of woman that thought he was a jerk to do that. But instead, I had these beautiful skills that really made me appreciate him and know that I was taken care of by him and loved by him. And so I had no regrets in the marriage. There was nothing left, nothing, not one word that I can think of left unsaid or undone. Wow. Like, the skills really gave me that gift. That's why I still thank you every time I say you, Laura. Like, they gave me that gift of just having this beautiful marriage that I would have never had. I know I wouldn't have. So I never went through the grief stage of anger because I had nothing to be angry about. He was taken, he was gone, but I still had 13 beautiful years back with him.
No, I love that story. And you've used this whole experience so beautifully, because now you are an incredibly powerful coach on our campus. You've helped literally hundreds, maybe thousands of women fix their relationships by relying on your story. I mean, what's that like, Dar? How is it to be a relationship coach?
Yeah.
Having this beautiful experience.
It all really kind of happened at the same time, becoming a relationship coach and Jay dying all happened right at the same time. And I have to say, I had my journey of grief for sure. Lots of crying, and the crying was just because I missed them, right?
Yeah.
So I had my journey of grief, but the way I look at it is every time I coach a woman, I feel like I'm respecting my husband to the ultimate level. Because if I can get another woman to really learn how to change her marriage and respect her husband, that's my way of respecting my own husband. Like, he showed me I really say he showed me that when I'm a certain way, he responded to that. So he showed me what kind of marriage I could have, even though I'm the one that did the work. He followed, right? So for me, it's just ultimate respect to be a coach, because I know from my own story that these skills work. Like what you taught works. And now 19 years later, I had this great base to go on, right? I had become a changed woman. And that's another thing the skills did. They changed me as a woman. And I really needed them, especially after he passed, because I needed, I had to be vulnerable. People were trying to help me and I had to reach out for help. So it gave me a whole new perspective of men. I know now that men really, really want to make us happy. And I say I was getting in my own way, So coaching for me is really personal. It's just a gift that I am paying forward, which feels so respectful to me.
Beautiful. Amazing. Love that. So
Yeah.
tell us, I know you have so many success stories with your clients, but tell us one that's top of mind right now. Whose success story is inspiring you of your clients?
So I've had a lot of clients over the years, but there's one in particular that just stands out to me, and because it was just so beautiful. So it was this year, actually. She was one of 4 different clients that have had really great success this year, but she stood out because when I had started coaching her, she had really just found your community and the program really within the last few months, few months prior. And her marriage had gotten to such a bad place after 22 years that her husband had another woman. He had moved out, and she was extremely controlling, but she didn't know it. She didn't know why her husband moved out and had another woman. But I think she originally had found the book. I'm not sure, which led her to finding the community. But so she was pretty new to the skills. But what stood out for me was, even though this was so far beyond what she ever thought, was the way to be in a marriage, she was willing to do what it took, just like I was willing to do what it took, right, to turn it around. So she found your program, and obviously I was her coach, and she was a great student. I mean, she took the program and really used it step by step how you had it. And, she knew there was another woman. He had moved out with the other woman, but she didn't let that distract her. Mm-hmm. And that sounds so impossible, right? When, like, how do I not act like she's there? But anyway, she really just wanted to give it a true, honest chance. So it took, let me see, it was probably about 3 months into her coaching, around there, don't quote me. We come to our call, and she had been seeing like things all along, changes in him, right? We call them wins. She had been seeing wins all along. He was engaging with her more. He was kind of sneaking out on the other woman and taking her out to dinner, and just doing things that she knew that whatever she was doing, it was working, right? Mm-hmm. And she really let go of the control and started taking care of herself, which she said she didn't even know that concept of taking care of herself. But anyway, so we get on a call about 3 months in, and she said, "You will never guess what happened." And I'm just expecting, I don't know, just a good win, right? And she said that he had called her and he had said, "I want you to pack a bag." And he told her what kind of climate to pack the bag for. And he said, "I made reservations, so I want you to meet me at the airport." And he told her exactly where to go at the airport. And he said, "I would love to take you away and make it the start to like a new beginning of our marriage." And he also asked, could he move back home?
Wow.
So she said that it was like such a pivotal moment. Does she trust him or does she not trust him, right? But what she had learned was she got great results when she trusted him. So she trusted him and she accepted his invitation. And they went away for, I forget, like 4 days. And when they came back, he moved back home. It was just that call in particular was the beautiful start of their new beginning.
So she saved her family.
Yeah. Well, here's the most interesting part, right? And we hear it over and over and over again from men. He said that it was her changes that made him want to come back. Her changes, like when she relinquished control of him and let him go through whatever he was going through, he said that he gave her all the credit. If she had not, she just made these changes that proved to him that they could have a different kind of marriage. And so he really gave her all the credit. And
her commitment, her courage to learn the skills.
Yeah.
Really, obviously, what made all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she had known all along over the 3 months that it was working, but she didn't know would it work enough for him to come back.
Yeah. So she was going on faith the whole time.
Yep. She went on faith.
And it worked.
Yeah. She stayed consistent, and she really just knew that she was dedicated to giving it this honest try. And she saw so much about herself, she just was like, oh my God, like I realized, her part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Just like you realized your part when you first
I did. Yeah, I did.
And you passed that forward. Well, Dar, this has been very inspiring. It's so gratifying to hear your beautiful love story with your beloved husband, Jay, and how you continue to pay that forward and show him respect by leading other women to having the kind of marriage that every woman dreams of, every little girl dreams of. So thank you so much for sharing. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, and thank you, because like I say over and over, I would have never had that had I not found you. So I know that God is good, right? So
glad we found each other, Dar.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Laura.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
But before I get to that, I wanted to also thank those of you who have been sending me submissions for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, because that makes me happy in my own contrary way that you are sharing the worst relationship advice with me. And I might feature it on a future podcast. And when I do, I'm going to give you a shout out. Of course, it'll be a first name only shout out because we are big on privacy around here. But I appreciate it. So if you see bad relationship advice that could be eligible for this award, just drop it to me in an email. I love that. Thanks for those of you who have already sent me the truly terrible relationship advice that you've seen for award consideration. I love that. And now for this week's Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award. And the advice that's got me exasperated this week is I statements. And this is where you say, I felt blank when you did blank. Like, I felt sad when you didn't take out the trash. And this, you may have heard, is the way you should communicate with your romantic partner so you can get what you need, because you've got to tell them what you want. And this is better than you statements like, you are such a slob, you didn't take out the trash. So here are some examples, though, of I statements that I found online, and OMG, they are truly terrible. The first one is, I felt lonely when you didn't come home to have dinner with me all week. Here's one. I got anxious when you didn't tell me you are running late. Here's one. I felt embarrassed when you were talking to that woman at the party for half an hour. Or I get confused and hurt when you leave your clothes on the floor because I thought I had communicated how important it was that you put them in the laundry basket. And I feel resentful when you take our dog to the dog park on the weekends without me when we have not had time together for weeks. Yikes. Okay, the promise here is that as long as you say I at the beginning of the sentence, you then have permission to say any damn thing you want after that, and you're still being thoughtful and caring and proper, even if you're zinging him with criticism. But that is definitely not going to improve the relationship. I promise. In my experience, any one of these sentences is an absolute intimacy and connection destroyer for your relationship. And one way to think about that is to imagine if a friend said to you, I felt lonely when you didn't call me all week. I mean, does that make you want to call your friend? Or does it make your friend seem really needy and kind of resistible and maybe even avoidable? These kinds of I statements are super tempting to use because it's like a permission slip to criticize, right? And my lower self is very tempted to criticize, but my best self knows it won't really get me what I want, which is a playful, passionate relationship at all. Quite the opposite. You might wonder how in the world, if you don't say things like this, that you're ever going to get what you want. And that's what I didn't know either. It wasn't until I learned and practiced the 6 intimacy skills and shared them with other women who became part of this huge tribe that we have now that I found much more effective ways to have the kind of relationship I want to have. So that's what this podcast is all about. We are not here because we're just sucking it up and letting the trash pile up endlessly. We are not here to eat dinner alone endlessly every night for the rest of our lives. Not at all. The point of all this, of all the coaches and everything on our campus, is to help you have an amazing, shiny, vibrant relationship where you're not tempted to say these ugly statements because you feel so loved and desired and taken care of. Nothing less. Not on my watch. And these I statements are only going to slow you down on your way to that worthy dream of yours to feel desired and cherished. And so for those reasons, the advice that you should use I statements with your man is the worst advice I've heard all week. Be sure to listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll be sharing what to do if your man never apologizes. You don't want to miss that. So be sure to tune in. I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I raced with a Ferrari when the light turned green yesterday, and I won. Now, he may not have known we were racing, but the point is, I won.